Good evening. Welcome to the meetings. Please stand for the pledge and remain standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pastor Felton, I don't think I see him here, so we'll just take a moment of silence if that's okay. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mayor Dickey.
Here.
Vice Mayor Tolas.
Here.
Councilmember Charno.
Here.
Councilmember Magazine.
Here.
Councilmember LaCrone.
Here.
Councilmember Spellich.
Here.
And Councilmember Brown.
Councilmember Brown is absent tonight. First item is the reports by mayor, council members, and town manager. What has everyone been up to? If you have anything to report, and now's the time. Councilwoman's thinking. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I can't remember. I know there was something.
I can go first because I have
the last 2 weeks.
Anybody else? Councilman.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I went to a Valley Metro board meeting March 21st. I talked a lot about their paratransit services, which deals with transporting the handicapped and that kind of thing. Different cities have different rules and regulations and budgets, of course, so they kind of talked about that. Valley Metro would kind of like to regionalize that system, but that's kind of down the road and might take some legislation, so interesting discussion. And Fountain Hills doesn't really participate in that particular program, but we do have ride choice that I know some of our folks take advantage of, but Valley Metro would like more people to take advantage of it as well, and that's offered to handicapped as well as just seniors in general, so it's kind of like a taxi service that's available to folks, so that was the work study session. The regular meeting kind of focused on budget and kind of the ridership numbers. And obviously we're going to have our budget talk coming up, but if you think ours keeps growing each year, their budget is at $332 million for next year. So it's quite a big operation. And then last week, March 27th, I went to a conference on aging and transportation. And the speakers there kind of focused on enhancing mobility for seniors, breaking down barriers, empowering underserved communities, technology, and just different strategies to better meet transportation needs for seniors. A lot of discussion on how transportation services really help seniors not become so socially isolated and actually keeps them healthier because they're socialize more and get to all their medical appointments and that kind of thing. So it's an interesting day, and came away with a few ideas that I'll be talking to staff about. So thanks.
Perfect. Thanks, Mike. Speaking of that, so you're all set with your meetings. I just wanted to reiterate that we have members. Vice Mayor is on the East Valley Partnership, and it looks like you might be having them your first meeting this Thursday. Councilman Magazine is on GPEC, which is the Greater Phoenix Economic Council Board of Directors. We got an email from the League about those policy committees, and our guys' names weren't on there, so we're checking in on that to make sure, because Council Member LaCrone and Spellich were going to be on the Public Safety, Military Affairs, and Courts. And they didn't have us listed, and they didn't have Councilman Charno mentioned in the infrastructure public work one. So Angela's going to call, and we'll kind of see what happened with that, because those start in April, which is now. Came so fast. So we'll get on that and make sure that you're all taken care of with that. There were a lot of things happening in Fountain Hills over the last couple of weeks. Leadership Academy had a nice gathering. They had the annual Purim party at Chabad. The charter school had an art class come and do a little tour of Centennial Circle. The NPOA had their annual membership meeting, the community garden. I was able to do that, and Councilwoman was there, and I think Michael, right? And we did the ribbon cutting there. I've been having a lot of ribbon cuttings. I went to the East Valley Mayor's Prayer Breakfast, which was in Gilbert. Wonderful event there. I had MAG Regional Council meeting, which is, they talked about Prop 400, which is going, the renewal of Prop 400, which will probably be called Prop 500, and make sure that we're getting in on all of that. It kind of goes into what you were talking about, make sure that we're at that table. That will be in 2022. And then our own Audra, who lives here in Fountain Hills, Kester Thomas, made that presentation. And then they're gearing up for Census 2020. That's going to be a big regional push to make sure that we count everybody, because it's really important when it comes to all of the services and other things that we want to happen. We had a Dark Skies Festival. That was really very well attended and a wonderful event. And then yesterday, we all said farewell to Nancy Walter after 15 years here and serving us here in Fountain Hills in a friendly, professional way, and we're certainly going to miss her and look forward to working with Angela, who will be taking care of all of us, and Grady. So we really appreciate that. That's anything. Anybody else have anything else to add? We'll go to call to the public. No cards for call to the public. So next we have our consent agenda. Would anybody like anything removed or make a motion?
Move approval.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. So we go to our regular agenda, which is, the first item is about medical defibrillators. Is that you, Grady?
Yes, Mayor and Council, I'm going to go ahead and call the fire chief up. He's going to cover this item, but just to let you know, we have in our facilities replacement fund, we've identified the need to replace defibrillators both in our facilities and buildings, but also as part of the fire department. These are what the chief just brought forward is one of the defibrillators that they carry on board. It's much more heavy-duty equipment. It has to really put up with a lot more abuse because they get banged around. They're utilized much more frequently than a typical defibrillator is, which is rarely used. And he's going to go ahead and give you a little bit of a brief outline on the importance of getting these replaced.
Mayor, Council.
Welcome.
Good evening. What we're asking for is a replacement of our existing Philips cardiac heart monitors that were purchased in 2007. And much like a cell phone that you can only use for about 2 years, our current Philips monitors are at the end of their life. That's what they call it, EOL. The Philips is no longer in the pre-hospital defibrillator equipment business. They're solely focused on hospital equipment. One of it is that we're a little bit hard on the equipment, not just I mean, we take good care of it, but when you look at it, it sits in the compartment of a truck that in the middle of the summer, it's 120 degrees. They're still kind of subject to a little bit of vehicle vibration and damage. The Philips is not supporting, we're going to support the monitors that we currently have anymore, and we had planned for that a while back prior to me being here, and had it in the facilities replacement fund, and it's due this year. Again, the current monitors are 12 years old, not being supported by Philips. We were able to get pricing on these through the Tucson procurement contract that we're a part of, so we got great pricing on it. The pricing for the contract also includes a $13,500 trade-in for 3 of our existing Philips monitors, and also a 3-year preventive maintenance agreement. These units are Bluetooth and Wi-Fi capable, so what that means for us is that in the event that there's a cardiac event for someone in town, we hook them up, we can transmit that information, the squiggly line things, that's a technical term. We can transmit that information directly to the hospital, which kind of helps with our ALS protocols, where we look at 30 minutes from incident to a door to stent or balloon, whatever you want to call it, getting the patient to the cath lab. It lets the doctors in the emergency room have that early detection of what's going on, and they can plan for it as we're en route with the patient. So we did get an alternate bid for, there are only 2 companies now that will produce defibrillators for pre-hospital use. We did get a bid from the other company, and it was $145,000. So it was considerably higher. So we did shop around. We feel $94,000 is a good deal. They've come a long way, and we paid approximately $20,000 in 2007 for the Philips monitors each. The technology is just greatly improved, and that's where we're seeing an increase in the cost. If you have any other questions, I'll be glad to try to answer.
Any questions? Councilman?
Presumably, anytime you use it, you're saving somebody's life. You have any feel for how often it's used, on a monthly or yearly basis?
We use them almost on every call.
Really?
If you call us and we come and you have anything that would resemble any kind of a possible cardiac event, or you don't know what's going on, we'll hook you up to the monitor and they'll analyze all that, and it's very good. An example, one of my neighbors was having problems the other day, and people think they just come across the street and I can take care of everything. But so we called the guys, got them hooked up. She'd never had been diagnosed with AFib in the past. They were able to take a quick look at it, and they diagnosed her before they got to the hospital because they see it all the time. It's a common piece of equipment. It goes in on every scene that we have. So it's taken in and out of the truck. If we have 15 calls that are medical related that day, this monitor's in and out of that truck 15 times.
I used to be in the medical technology field, and I remember in the beginning when these came out, there were a lot of problems, technology problems in the field. Have you had any issues, any problems?
Well, they've kind of improved on that, and I don't know how long ago it was that you were in that field, but.
We won't get into that.
I knew that was coming.
Cell phones in the big box.
Yeah, you had the brick.
You
This
asked for that
equipment is greatly improved. We thought we had the top of the line monitors in 2007. These do a number of other items that the other ones didn't do. Again, not only will this monitor or analyze your heart rhythm, it'll allow us to shock in different degrees. And this is different than the automated external defibrillators that we have as part of our public access defibrillator program that you see in the first floor here, upstairs. We have them at the community theater when that was a town-owned building. The schools have them all in there. Those units are about anywhere from $900 to $3,000 depending on the use. Those are set up for civilian use, and they'll analyze a heart rate and not allow you to shock if it's not a shockable rhythm. But it is not the technology that's here that's going to be able to provide the information that the cardiologist will need when we're en route to the hospital to be able to save you in that major cardiac event.
Thank you.
Any others? And do we have any speaker cards on this? No? Thank you. Would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I would move that we approve contract C 2019-068 with Zoll Medical in the amount of $94,499.06.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You never have to.
Yeah, for sure. The next item is regarding abandonment of utility and drainage easement. Grady?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. This particular item came before you back in February. On February 19th, the Town Council approved the abandonment of a 10-foot public utility and drainage easement. The reason why it's coming back before you is at the time this item was on consent, and the resident was not aware that the item that staff had put before you had also a request that the resident grant a 10 by 10 public utility easement in the front yard as part of the condition that this be approved. So before you tonight is consideration of dropping the stipulation. In talking to the staff, this is not an unusual situation. In past requests for the abandonments, we have done this. However, we have re-examined after I got into looking at this situation, and basically we've put a directive that we're not going to be doing any more of these in the front yards. If the utility companies in the future wish to have that happen, they can certainly contact the property owner. It's not for the town to get involved. So anyways, Ms. Stassi is here in the audience. She is the one who requested the mayor initially to get involved in this, and the mayor made me aware of the situation. So I met with Ms. Stassi, and after listening to her and understanding what the situation was, I recommended that the council approve removing the stipulation tonight at the meeting. Thank you.
Any questions? We have a speaker card if necessary. Looks like we'll probably be okay on this, but you're certainly free and welcome to come up if you'd like. Thank you. So, motion, please.
I'll move for approval as written.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion to remove the stipulation and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Thank you, ma'am. Next, we have item 7C about a Caterpillar backhoe. Grady?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, the item before you is a request for staff to purchase a 2019 Caterpillar backhoe in the amount of $130,000 to replace the current backhoe. The current backhoe, I believe, is close to 19 years old. It's near the end of its useful life. We do budget through our annual replacement fund for the replacement of heavy equipment and vehicles. Our Public Works Director has more to say about this, and we'd be happy to answer any questions about any technical questions you may have.
Thank you.
Justin?
Hi.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of the council. The town manager is correct. This is a 1999 Caterpillar backhoe that has been heavily utilized by all of the town departments for various uses. Most recently, it has come under extremely heavy use for storm debris cleanup. It's tired and due for replacement, but right now is in need of some repairs that are above the threshold that we would approve. So its trade-in value varies, but roughly it's worth about $7,000 right now on a trade-in. And the repairs for this, estimated by the manufacturer, somewhere around $33,000. What we are actually here tonight is to ask for your approval to purchase it earlier than shown in the schedule. The schedule for replacement is actually July of 2019, but we are in need of one now, since we do not have one. And so I would be able to answer any questions that you have in regards to the purchase or any other items related to this.
Thank you. Councilwoman?
Thank you. I have a question, but I spoke with Craig, and I think he said he would be best to answer it. I've had people come up to me from the public and say, well, the town is short of money, or saying that we need more revenues, and yet we have nice new vehicles driving around. And I understand it, but some people in the public may not. So what I wanted was just a very brief explanation about the vehicle replacement fund and how it works.
Mayor, council member, the town has a vehicle replacement fund that was and is adopted as part of the budget process. The vehicle replacement fund has a fund balance of, off the top of my head, around $1 million. The way the fund operates is every vehicle that is purchased is amortized over its estimated life, which is documented in the vehicle replacement policy. So if we buy a $100,000 vehicle with a 10-year life, we will charge the operating department $10,000 a year for 10 years to essentially recoup the initial cost of that by the time the vehicle is expected to be replaced. Based on my calculations recently, this $1 million that we have in the fund will essentially keep the fund as a self-sustaining fund without any further contributions needed from the general fund other than the normal amortization that is charged to the operating department. Is that simple and
That is, and
clear
thank you
enough?
very much. And it helps me also to better explain it to people that have come up to me. Thank you.
And then
Councilman Spellage?
just to let you know too, for the mayor and council's reference too, years ago, prior to Craig coming on, when we had this fund initially established, it was exactly how he's described. It was amortized, but they didn't build any inflationary factor. So Craig has been building at least the inflationary factor and then amortizing that over 10 years.
Correct.
Or 5 years if it's a sedan or whatever. So the point is, it has become much more sustainable. When I first came here as manager, this was projected to be in the hole by a couple years. It would be, it was running almost like a deficit. We were able to make some maneuvers in the early years to get it fully in the black. And then as we've been replacing vehicles, we've been building in the inflationary factor so that when it comes time to replace the vehicles, there's no, oops, we didn't budget enough or we didn't put away enough money. So thanks to Craig and being on top of things, I feel really good about the vehicle replacement fund and the direction the town's going on that.
Thank you. Councilman Spellage?
Two questions for you, Director Weldy. The first question is, what could we expect that this used tractor, what do we expect it to bring at auction versus the trade-in value of it? And the second question is, when reading through the documents that the vehicle or this piece of heavy equipment will have a 12-month manufacturer warranty, would it make sense for the town, considering that it was $30,000 to fix the old one? Obviously, it's expensive to fix heavy equipment. Would it make sense for the town to look into the possibility of purchasing an extended warranty for the equipment?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Spellage, the first question in regards to what its value is, the value for trade-in to the manufacturer in a written offer is $7,000. Based on most recent surplus items that we sold, our older vehicles and some smaller pieces of equipment, we believe that we most likely will receive more funding by sending it to auction. And that auction agreement that we use is a statewide auction. And this is just based on most recently, we have sold vehicles there that brought in considerably more revenue than we would have expected. Does that answer your question, your first question? The second question in regards to the warranty. The current piece of equipment that we have did not have any issues for the first 15 years. At year 15, it required approximately $12,000 to replace and service the torque converter. Most recently, during the last storm events of last year, it was under a considerable amount of stress, and as a result of that, a large piece of it, the arm on the backhoe portion, broke. We asked for an inspection of it to determine the cost as part of our replacement and also whether or not it would be worth fixing. The manufacturer, which is Caterpillar, they provided us a cut sheet that shows the approximate cost is $33,000 to repair this boom and a few other minor things that would happen to a 20-year-old vehicle. The second answer to that question is we do have options in regards to warranty, and I have them here for the manufacturer. It already comes with a 12-month, no questions asked, and in that warranty, they will come to the piece of equipment and do whatever repairs necessary at no additional cost to the town. The first option we have is a 3-year, 1,500 hours, and this is referred to as the government premier. This is for the things that are likely to break, but doesn't cover tires and glass and those sort of things that are wearable or would break in the event of some type of situation, a tree branch or what have you. For that 3-year, the basic price is $1,590. The second 3-year, 1,500 hour, which is the hybrid, is $630. That covers part of the drivetrain, but not the entire drivetrain. So that covers really the transmission and the hydraulics that operate the front loader and the rear portion of the equipment, but again, not the engine. The one that is a 5-year, 2,000 hour, which is bucket to bucket is what they refer to it. So anything that is not a wearable item or something that is subject to be broken during normal use, windows, those kind of things, that's $4,000. Based on our current history and what is known about the one that we currently have, not needing any real repairs for 15 years, it is my opinion that any monies spent here would not be a benefit.
Councilman?
Probably wasn't listening as carefully as I could have, but I have another question for Craig. We have $1 million in the vehicle replacement fund, correct?
Yes.
And how much are we depleting that annually?
It varies. This current year, I believe we purchased 2 vehicles. Next year, we're scheduled to replace 9 different pieces of equipment. Some of them are gators, the little park tractors, and some vehicles, and we were scheduled to replace the backhoe.
So clearly, our manager and you do not believe that $1 million is excessive for that fund.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Councilman?
Sure,
Vice Mayor?
thank you. I have a question for our finance director. So if the money was not allocated from this vehicle replacement fund, you said you're going to be doing this and amortizing it over a 10-year period, so $10,000 a year for 10 years, essentially, to pay for this. Is that?
I don't recall the life for a backhoe. It's a 20 years, so we're going to be amortizing it over 20 years.
Okay. When you talk about the previous vehicle, 15 years without any service needs, major service needs, I'm sure you changed oils and things, of grease fittings and things of that nature. How many hours on this vehicle after 15 years?
6,000.
6,000. So I did a little research to determine what it would cost to buy a used vehicle. And a used Caterpillar in a 2012 model would cost about $37,000, according to my numbers. So is that ever a consideration, to look to buy something that would be in good shape, would have some sort of a limited warranty, but if we can get 15 years out of the vehicle that we had now, is it realistic to think we might be able to get additional 7 years off of a 2012 and save $100,000?
Madam Mayor, the councilmember or vice mayor told us the short answer is we could assume that without laying eyes on the piece of equipment and knowing its background. However, the current vehicle replacement policy as adopted does not allow for the purchase of used equipment due to the challenges related to us really not knowing its history. And when we're talking about a Caterpillar, it's considerably different than a pre-owned Volvo or other type of vehicle that the manufacturer typically goes through. And it has a, well, for lack of a better description, a dealer prep package that goes with it, and then they oftentimes will offer you an extended warranty. In my opinion, not knowing what that vehicle is or having reviewed it, I would not be willing to take that risk on behalf of the town, and also the prohibition in our policy for that.
May I have a follow-up question on that? There's also options to do monthly leasing on these types of equipment when it comes and it's an emergency situation. If you don't have the vehicle now, it looked to me like it costs about $2,500 a month to actually rent one of these from a leasing company. Are those considerations? I just don't. I asked you how many hours because I don't know whether you're out there every day on a backhoe in the town of Fountain Hills, or whether it is in certain circumstances such as Golden Eagle Park that it became an issue that you needed to do some real big removals. Just trying to get a perspective as to how often you're using these, and whether there are any other options to save money at all, and whether maybe we need to review our policy in regards to purchasing and going forward. It's just a discussion item. I'd just like to hear from you from that.
Understood. We currently have agreements in place for rental from 3 of the Valley rental equipment locations. The challenge with renting equipment and the storm events and a few other occasions most recently have created a pretty big challenge for us. And the reason is the equipment was 3 to 5 days initially before they could deliver it, and we actually did not end up receiving it for use for 14 days. And that was after we pulled the entire valley. What we did do is we reached out to one of our contractors that we are under contract with for storm cleanup, and he was able to rent one from Tucson and have it shipped up here. Rental is a good idea, and we certainly utilize it whenever possible and practical, but for regular events, it is not possible because we certainly don't have the ability to plan. The second part of your multi-part question in regards to its use, for the first 15 years, it was utilized daily because the street department at that time was approximately 13 strong, and a single individual used the backhoe daily to perform various activities around town. Since in the last 5 years, it's used a few times a month, maybe once or twice a week, but the primary use is for storm cleanup, and if we have any minor little things like removing large trees after a vehicle crash or something, we utilize that. Does that answer the majority or all of your questions?
It gives me a perspective of use, and it leads me to believe we should be looking at getting a couple of vehicles. Maybe it would, couple of used vehicles. Maybe you'd have more manpower that you can go out and.
Well, that is a very gracious offer, and we appreciate that. However, we are short-staffed.
Short-staffed.
Grady.
Could get an employee, too.
I just wanted to also address, I thought the Vice Mayor brought up a couple good points. One is obviously consideration of purchasing used vehicles, which I'll get into momentarily. The other one was we had a couple years ago, the council asked us to look at leasing vehicles versus, and I'm just talking vehicles, not heavy equipment like this, leasing versus purchasing. And at the time we looked at it, the council came to the conclusion that even when you're leasing, you're paying there's a loan interest factor that's built into it. And so by the time they figured out, and we gave them examples, real life examples of purchasing vehicles, they came to the conclusion that leasing probably really didn't really pay off that well, especially since we tend to hold on to the vehicles a little bit longer than sometimes their useful life. The other thing about the used vehicles, I will tell you, the fire chief and I did look seriously when we were looking at replacing the ladder truck. We were looking at, because that's such a huge cost, and we were looking at if there was something available out there. We even looked at getting a demo. That might be something that, demo's already got the right off the dealership, so to speak, costs, where the depreciation, you're not having to really pay for that initially off the top. So we do look at things like this, and we do periodically determine if there are some advantages to buying used equipment or used vehicles. I think in the case, as you've heard tonight, I think with a 15-year life, I think we've gotten a really good value out of it. It is a lot of money, and I do think that what the Vice Mayor brought up is we do also need to be looking at these things periodically, because as to your point, if you had maybe a 7-year life of something that only costs $37,000, it is something that should be looked at possibly. I do think, though, in the case that we talked about tonight, I think that this is a really good investment, and I think that the fact that they take really good care of the equipment, it seems like it's a really good investment. But I can assure you that we do look at these types of different options and alternatives when we bring these high-ticket items to you. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Councilman?
Justin, in light of what you just said previously about the use of the backhoe and the personnel and that kind of thing, I would think if that continues for years down the road, the 15-year lifespan, that's going to be longer under less usage circumstances, correct? Or
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Charno, it's difficult to predict what uses we are going to need. We are certainly aware from last year that we are going to have some unusual storm events. We are aware now that we will have less need for it on Fountain Hills Boulevard. Once the shoulders are paved, we should not have as much, if any, outflow of debris onto the road there. So there is a plus minus. It's very difficult to predict what the need will be.
But I mean, under normal circumstances or an average year, I mean, that, I know there've been some unusual storm situations this past year, but normally, I mean, it sounds like it would be utilized a little bit less, like.
If you're referencing, yes, the first 15 years, we will not have a person using it daily and driving it around and stuff like that. It'll only be utilized when needed.
And certainly we can talk about the policy again if we want on vehicle replacement, but from what I heard tonight, it sounds like to me, it sounds like a good fiscal policy. So with that, I'll go ahead and move approval for purchase of a 2019 Caterpillar 420 F2 backhoe for $130,595.17.
Councilmember Charno, if you can also include the budget transfer in that in the motion, if you would, please.
And the budget transfer for that same amount.
Thank you.
Second.
Do we have any speaker cards? No. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, Justin.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, next is item 7D, which is Christmas tree for first responders. Grady?
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, the Community Services Director and I had an opportunity to meet with residents Lena Bellinaire and Bob Scarpetti. They proposed a concept for a Christmas tree on the Avenue of the Fountains on one of the other plazas on Verde River to honor first responders. And the concept would be that they would be, this tree would be up during the holiday season when all the other decorations are on the avenue, and it would have decorations to symbolize first responders. And so we went ahead and we met, we came up with some cost estimates based on what we're currently spending for the tree that's over at the Morgan Plaza over at on Saguaro and at the Avenue. And it's approximately $8,000. So because of the timing on this, we had encouraged them to come forward to tonight's council meeting to give a presentation to be able to answer questions that you may have. We also indicated that due to the need to move forward on this, if this is something the council agreed with, that they would need to fundraise for this, and that the fundraising, we would need to have that probably concluded probably by June, only because the company that we have do all of our holiday decorations would probably need to start planning to purchase that. So in any case, I know that I see Lena is here and so is Bob, so they're here to make a presentation on this.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Dickey,
Hi.
members of council and staff. First responders' duties bring them into harm's way every day. Police officers, firefighters, and paramedics put themselves on the front lines of dangerous and traumatic events, and it's common to wonder how you can thank these individuals, perhaps lessening the emotional burden of their work. Bob, a retired police detective, and myself, and so many others feel that as a community, we need to be there for them as they are for us. Many of our residents have expressed a heartfelt thank you in other ways, simple ways, such as maybe cooking a meal and bringing it over to the stations, sending a letter of thanks, or offering a gift basket. Everyone, of course, is encouraged that when you have a good experience with a first responder, spreading the word either online or in person can do a great service to the department. It's not a direct thanks to the police, fire, and paramedic personnel, but speaking well of these individuals is a gesture of gratitude, one that is easy and impactful. Each of us knows a first responder has been helped by one, or has a family member dedicated to these professions. Bob and I would like to take an extra step by honoring these men and women during the Christmas season by adding to our current Christmas display on the Avenue of the Fountains a blue lighted Christmas tree. This simple gesture would do wonders for their morale and demonstrate public unity and support for their tireless giving. Just about every day, you likely pass police officers, firefighters, and paramedics going about their daily business. We feel this is a great way to show respect and appreciation for them. As far as we could research, this idea would bring Fountain Hills to the forefront because it would be the first community municipal tree in Arizona. We have received positive feedback. The fundraising goal that has been set after meeting with Rachel and the town manager are reasonable, and we feel we can reach that goal. And all we need is your approval, and we hope that we obtain that this evening. We'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we want to ask questions now, or do we have another presentation? Is there any staff presentation on this?
No, the only thing that Rachel and I, when we had discussed this previously, is that just maybe there might be other groups, and that this might be setting a precedent if and whether that's a good or bad thing, but that's one thing we thought of. So that's the only thing I thought that might be just put into the discussion as well.
Does anybody have any discussion or questions?
We got a lot of room for Christmas trees downtown.
Say again, I'm sorry?
I said, I think we have a lot of rooms for
Oh.
Christmas trees downtown. So I would be 100% in favor of this, and I think it would be fantastic to have Fountain Hills at the forefront of honoring first responders. I think it's a great idea.
Okay. Yes, Councilwoman.
They are absolutely heroes and on many occasions angels. And I think honoring our first responders, police officers, fire, paramedics is a great idea. And I think my question is, if we do allow and then others come to us, how are we going to deal with that as a town? I mean, what is your thought on that, Grady? And secondly, maybe we should consider going further and having some day of appreciation if so many citizens are wanting to show their support. That's just an idea to throw out there. But anyway, my question.
Well, like anything, if we're concerned about this might proliferate into other types of requests for other causes, we may want to actually come up with a policy. I'm not saying that be tonight, but in the future. There might be some requests. As an example, let's say we had something that was, completely inappropriate or something like that. I'd probably deny it at the town manager level, just because I would know that would probably be something offensive, and I wouldn't want to recommend that or bring it forth. And then if the person or a group wanted to override that and take it to the council, that would be their prerogative. But I do think that that it may be worth evaluating, like we have the naming rights policy and we have other policies that help guide the council on a number of these types of issues or concerns, that might be something more longer term that we may want to deal with, so that we don't have this turn into something that we never intended to turn into.
Thank you. Councilman?
Well, just that I certainly would favor approving it for this year. I think make it clear it's for this year until we have a policy brought before us that we can all discuss. I think we want to avoid the slippery slope of what can happen.
Councilman?
Just a quick question. Do we know what it's going to look like? I know you mentioned blue lights, but I mean, is it going to have different ornaments or look like the other tree and just have blue lights, or?
I'm going to have Rachel come up, because she and her staff actually coordinate the holiday decorations. And I know she's had some contact with the vendor on this. So, Rachel, do you recall the discussion you might have had with the vendor, and what you described for this? Was it more than just the blue lights?
Sure. It was actually a first request for them. They have not done something of this to this scale before. The intention as of right now is for the tree to be the same size as the tree that you see featured down on the Saguaro end. So size-wise, I want to say that's roughly 24 feet. Is that right? I want to say it's 20 feet to the tree, and then the topper is roughly 4 feet on top of that. If you recall, that tree is on top of a platform. It's on we created a platform that sits over the fountain to give it a little bit more height, a little more elevation. I believe that's the intention and the hope for this tree as well. The decor would be blue lights with other blue ornaments embedded into it. We were just talking about the longevity of those. You know, the ornaments are the thing that kind of take a beating from the sun and things like that. So I would expect that those may be changed out over time if this is a continued effort. But only time will tell on that.
Councilman?
Just a question, would there be any kind of a presentation or speeches or anything surrounding this kind of thing? And the reason I ask is that there was quite a brouhaha a year or two ago about honoring people and political speech and so on. So I just want to make sure that if there is any kind of speeches or anything, that it be totally nonpartisan.
Bob Scarpetti, Fountain Hills resident. I got here when they bought that backhoe in '99.
I'm sorry? Oh, I get you.
There's no political speeches here. If we have anything, it'll be a sign honoring those people.
Yeah, that was, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As many of you know, I'm a retired Chicago police officer, like Mr. Scarpetti. The state of Arizona has been affected greatly this year by I believe 4 officers already killed in the line of duty, and we're only in the month of April. So I believe that honoring first responders, paramedics, firefighters, and police officers, and anybody that helps us is just an unbelievable cause because it's a thankless job, and we take a beating in the media. So I'm definitely for this, and I already spoke with Lena about this, and let me be the first one to offer you a check for $200 if this is approved tonight. And we have an unbelievable amount of retired police officers that live in Fountain Hills, as well as retired law enforcement, as well as retired firefighters and everything, so I believe your goal will be reached with no problem.
When you talk about a platform or that kind of thing, are we having any expenses in this?
So our staff actually created the platform. Our public works staff, Justin and his folks, created what's down the other avenue, the end of the avenue. I believe it was steel plates. What was the metal? Was it a fiberglass? What was that?
We utilized an exterior wood product.
Okay.
And in fact, we are going to recreate that in a reused platform, a more durable substance this year, and replace that wood one. We believe it'll be more aesthetically pleasing, and the longevity will be increased substantially.
At the Saguaro location?
Correct.
Okay. So I had anticipated that the town's portion of this might just be the in-kind, just to do the platform itself, because we want to ensure that we basically have that done correctly and that it's safe and we're not going to have a tree falling on people. So I do think that that would be the town's contribution, and then the other part of the town's contribution would be coordinating this whole thing through the holiday lighting company to be included as part of the overall thing. And then what we'll do is, since we have a contract in place for approximately $35,000 a year, if and when, and I have every belief that they'll be able to raise the money, we'll have them write the check to the company rather than, give the money to us or increase the contract. We'll just go ahead and do it that way.
That's great. I know that we have other, I think, maybe 1 or 2 other displays that are from other groups, and it's independent, they take care of it, but like the poinsettia tree, I think. So this isn't unprecedented. I think that as we go...
Menorahs as well, or the others.
Yeah, that's right. So, we've seen where other entities take care of what's on there. And as you mentioned, all of us have been touched, have active duty one way or the other in their families. The signage, though, so this is just going to be the tree. What would a sign say? If you were going to have a sign, would that be something that we would be able to take a look at? I'm pretty sensitive to this being straightforward, which I think it sounds like it will be.
With approval of the town and council. With approval. We
Yeah.
haven't come up with anything yet, but that will be the right thing.
Why don't you, if the council's pleasure is to go forward with this, then maybe in your motion that you direct staff to bring back the proposed concept for the sign for the first responders tree, and then we'll bring that back at a later date.
That'd be great, because that would be like with the public art, so when the signs go up, then we, it's just kind of a look at the whole thing, and then we'll know what it would look like. Councilman?
Has there been any thought to running the money through a 501c3, so it's like a donation that's tax deductible?
Oh, yeah, like Fountain Hills Civic Association. Yeah.
Not as of yet. We're going to reach out to Phyllis Kern, the expert in that area, and she, I'm sure, will agree to help us out. So she'll guide us along that process.
Vice Mayor?
I'm ready to make a motion that we move forward with this.
Moving motions.
I make a motion for approval of the Christmas tree for first responders, and that the plaque that will appear at the tree be approved by council and staff prior to the placement.
Want to second it?
Second?
Any further, do we have any speaker cards? No? Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Our last item, wait, I'm sorry.
Who seconded?
I think Art seconded it, yeah. We've got discussion with possible direction relating to any item on the league's legislative bulletins or other actions on pending before state legislature. Any new items? There is one, right? So we've talked about everything, and the bills that we are in favor of, the hands-free and the short-term rental, appear to be moving. So, we're feeling okay about that. But now a new one popped up, which is a strike everything that unfortunately seems like it might undermine what we just were recognized for, which was our smoke-free community. So hopefully that's not going to happen. It looks like it's a bill that they want to raise the age for tobacco and vape using to 21. But they added that statewide preemption language, which broadly undermines and kind of can reverse the fact that we have the smoke-free zones. So we're hoping that's not going to happen. I tried to weigh in on it, but it wasn't on the online yet. But it's supposed to be on rules. If you're on that request to speak, you can put that in there. But the league is on it, and it just kind of goes to show, though, when you think they're almost done, we're not. They can strike something on there. But that would really be a shame, because we just got that great recognition for that, for having smoke-free parks. Well, hopefully they'll sine die soon. But that's about it for that. I don't think we have to take any action. Just wanted to let you know it was a new one. The last item, of course, is our council discussion direction to the manager. Does anybody have anything from anything you heard or anything you would like him to follow up on?
I have a few.
Yes, Vice Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Ready? Okay, number one. And I'm serious about this, but it's actually kind of funny. Can you look into our policy regarding pulling permits for lemonade stands for children? This has been an interesting discussion in Fountain Hills, and I would encourage children to be entrepreneurs. So if we can have a policy exception to our permit pulling process in town to allow children to do this without being stopped by code enforcement, I think that'd be a positive advancement for our community.
Do we need to have a definition of children, too?
School age
School
children.
age, okay, that's helpful.
Okay, I want to.
Does that count college age, too?
Well, if they want, yeah. I want to recognize Betsy Lavoy. I asked Betsy to come. Betsy has just, within the last, I think, month and a half, took a job with the Fountain Hills Chambers of Commerce. And I'm hoping you continue to come to these meetings. I'd like to continue to move forward with our discussion regarding Saguaro Boulevard and the Business Access Road discussion. I'd like to have that put on an agenda in the near future, and I'd like to work with Betsy, the Chamber of Commerce, and Michael, who I know now is interim with Scott Cooper's position, and invite the business owners either to a council meeting or a work study session to look at options to improve that area of Saguaro, to improve it for their businesses to be more successful. And Zentar Grounds with MCO has already had preliminary discussions with many business owners and has had very, very positive feedback. This has been an idea that has been kicking around for about 15 years. I'd also
Just to let you know, Vice Mayor, that has been placed on the future agendas list that the council all gets, but it was being put back a little bit because we were waiting to hear back on your report. So that's helpful. We can maybe move that up sooner.
And I'd like I say, work with the Chamber of Commerce, Zentar Grounds, and we need a team to work together with the town. This can't just be a town managed process. I'd also like to ask you as the town manager to reach out to the Downtown Merchants Association, and I'd like to have some updates as to the downtown and their proposed lease businesses that may be coming in, and if we can get an update on Park Place in regards to occupancy numbers. I think that'd be very informative for our council and for our community as a whole, and I think I'd like to see us being proactive in reaching out to these business leaders in town and bringing them to the council to help to educate us as to what's happening that we may not always know. So those are a few of my comments, and look forward to hearing back.
Just a real quick clarification. So when you mentioned the Downtown Merchants Association, is there an actual organization? Because I know there's a plot, there's a 208 group that we've met with before, so that's that group, but then Park Place obviously is not part of that, so.
Right, the whole downtown district, we need to reach out to the leadership down here in town and find out what's working, what's not working, and how we as a town can move forward to help them to be more successful. And I just would like to get some updates as to what's happening.
Okay, just to let you know real quick, the Community Services Director and I met with them recently to kind of mitigate some parking issues that some of these fairs have been causing, and I think we worked out those issues pretty well, and I think those two that are in the leadership, one is the director, and the other one is like the board member president. And so I think they'd be really very excited and amenable to working with the town.
Excellent.
Councilman?
Just piggybacking on part of that, I do think, if we could find out more about the occupancy of Park Place, but I don't know how much can be revealed, but if Park Place is sold and if the additional buildings that were approved are going to be built, they'll have a profound impact on the town, and whatever we can find out in that regard, I think would be helpful.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Grady, also I wanted to bring it to your attention that I was approached by a citizen this week that had a fire hydrant jump out in front of his car. And there was a instant response by the fire department within under 4 minutes. And EPCOR took quite a while. In the time that it took, thousands of gallons of water were wasted, only to find out that EPCOR will not give a key to shut off that water supply to our fire department. So I spoke briefly with the assistant fire chief in passing and let him know about it, but as a town manager, if you could look into it, I mean, we live in a desert. Obviously, water is not that plentiful. If a fire truck takes under 4 minutes to get to a scene, but EPCOR takes a half an hour to 45 minutes, that's kind of unacceptable. So if one key could be given to either.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll talk to Justin as well, because I know we actually, if it happens during a work week, Public Works will also typically try to do the capping or try to do what they can to minimize the water loss. So, but thank you. That's certainly something we'll follow up with.
Thank you.
Anything else? Motion to adjourn? All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, thank you.